Hi, everyone. Welcome to Data Analytics 309, where we're going to talk about advanced techniques in Cloud Data Prep for cleaning your data. Quick show of hands. How many people here are familiar with Cloud Data Prep? Show your hands. OK, we've got a good number of you. Sorry, I can't see because lights are right in my eyes. Today will definitely be an advanced session. We're going to talk about some of the more challenging techniques in data prep. But we will start off with a brief overview of Cloud Data Prep, just to level set everyone, make sure everyone's at the same point. The main focus will be talking about the data prep lifecycle and common challenges we've seen with our customers. And then we'll talk about specific scenarios and advanced techniques to solve them. Okay? As part of this, we'll, of course, be interspersing demonstrations live with my co-presenter. And then at the end, we'll do a brief recap, as well as, if we have time, some Q&A. OK? Brief introductions. Sean Ma, I'm the product manager responsible for Cloud Data Prep. Been with it since the very beginning. And with me is Cindy Sood. She's the data prep sales engineer for North America. And we're both from Trifacta. So as you know, Google and Trifacta have partnered for the last few years to provide you Cloud Data Prep as a service. And it's part of the GCP Big Data Suite. Together, we've got thousands of joint companies, tens of thousands of users, and millions of data prep jobs running all around the world. You may ask the question, who's Trifacta? We're an industry leader in data preparation, as recognized by analysts and customers. And more importantly, together with Google's serverless platform and Trifacta's easy-to-use interface, our goal is to help you get the most value out of your data. OK, enough with introductions. We'll do a really quick overview of where Cloud Data Prep is, and then we'll get into those scenarios I talked about. So I'm sure everyone here at Google Next has access to tons of data, right? You know, it's coming in all the time. You probably have too much more data than you can handle. The key question, though, of course, is gaining insight from that data, right? Regardless if it's marketing data, IoT data, machine learning training data, how do you get insight out of that data? So Cloud Data Prep is specifically designed to solve this challenge by providing you data preparation as a service, where you can visually explore, clean, and transform any type of data, whether it be semi-structured, structured data, you name it, you'll be able to work with it in an easy-to-use interface without having to set up any infrastructure, install any VMs, or manage any systems, right? Our goal is to make data preparation, which typically takes weeks and a lot of effort to do, into something that takes days, if not hours. And of course, we want to make this as accessible as possible to a wide range of users. So there's data scientists, I'm sure in the audience, data engineers and data analysts. We want to make sure that everyone can use data preparation without having to write any code. All right. So how does this work? Very briefly. So what I'll first cover is on how we access data. So Data Prep has native integration with your GCP project through IAM. And so it allows you to access data directly in BigQuery and cloud storage, or you can upload your own files. So that way, you can use a self-service interface to then transform, profile, cleanse, join any of your data that you need. Okay? Now, when it comes down to actually executing this at scale, Cloud Data Prep uses the power of data flow in order to easily and efficiently scale to any region in the world. The last thing I'll note is that once you've got the data prepared and refined, the question is, where do you want to put it? And often the downstream systems that you'll see here on the analyze side are going to be BigQuery. You can load it in there for additional querying. You can use it for BigQuery ML. You can obviously build reports in Data Studio, so that's often an end result for this. But just as often, you're loading into cloud storage, where you might actually use it as in Cloud ML to train a model. Okay? So these are different, at a very high level, how data comes in, how it's transformed, and where it goes once you're done with it. OK, last slide from the introduction is, when do you use Cloud Data Prep? What use cases is it good for? Now, don't get me wrong. Clean, prepared data is going to be useful in many places, right? Who doesn't want to use that? But we found in particular that many of our customers focus on three particular use cases where they're most successful with, right? The first one's data onboarding. This is where analysts in particular need to deal with third-party or external data, and they want to integrate it into their existing pipeline. But because it comes from a third party, it doesn't always conform to their internal standards, external formats, so it's actually hard to use and hard to automate. So how do you get that standardized fix so that you can use it inside? Next is Next is data science and machine learning, right? So this is not just for analysts, all right? Oftentimes, data scientists are using data prep because if you want to train your model, you really want well-structured, clean data in order to be most efficient with these projects. And the last one's marketing analytics. Probably most folks are familiar with this. You got lots of marketing data that's being generated, especially in the Google Suite. But oftentimes, you want to gain additional insight from that marketing data by combining it with data from from other departments, sales, finance, support. So in order to join the data, aggregate it, pivot it, all those analytics that you need in order to get the most out of it, you often need to manipulate and transform the data as well. In all three cases, data prep is designed specifically to help you with these three scenarios. All right. So that's enough of the intro. Now we're going to get into the meat of it, and we're going to talk about common challenges that customers really have faced during the data prep lifecycle. What we'll do is I'll go through the scenarios and kind of give you an overview of that, and then we'll switch over to Cindy, who will actually give you a live demonstration of each one. Okay? So let's start off with the data prep lifecycle. This is just a quick diagram for that. Right? Starting off on the left here, you're starting off with raw data. The goal is then to discover what's inside of it so that you can structure and clean the data, right? And then clean the data, remove obvious data quality errors so that you can then go to the enrich phase where you're combining it, joining it, aggregating, basically transforming the data to what you need. Following that, then you'll validate it to make sure it conforms to your organization's rules and definitions. And ideally, this whole thing goes into an analytics, downstream analytics, like I said, Data Studio or ML initiative from there. Now, you might notice this is a very iterative process, and that's intentional. And so you can do the whole thing through the data prep interface where you're kind of going through this and cleaning your data, preparing your data to the point where exactly what you need, exactly what your standards. And the goal here is for you to do this yourself, and you can do this really rapidly without any additional help. Now, of course, once you get that data into that format that you need, you can then automate it, you can fully automate it, and you can schedule it so it runs periodically. So now you've empowered your pipeline to run without you being there and just updating and your downstream systems. Okay? So that's the high-level data prep lifecycle. Now let's get into the challenges associated with it. These ones are specific scenarios that we've seen with customers in different phases along this journey. Okay? So we'll start off with the discovery and structuring phase. And while it's really nice that when the data is in perfect rows and columns and no issues up front, very often you get semi-structured data or even unstructured data. And those things, in order to get any value out of that, you actually need to access the individual elements and dig into it from there. So that's the first type of problem that we'll be tackling. How do you handle that kind of nested data? Following that, as part of kind of the, after you've structured the data and you're going into the cleaning phase, you'll often find that the data doesn't necessarily have the right format for what you're looking for. Often it's actually a slightly different patterns you're dealing with in your data. And again, it's very hard to make use of data that's all of different formats, of different patterns inside of it. You want to standardize that, or you want to normalize that into something standard so that you can actually, again, perform your transformations and cleanse it. And next is on the cleaning side. While you can apply common data quality rules, removing nulls, checking for statistics against the data, you may also encounter situations where humans have entered the data. So there's issues with the entry of the data that it just doesn't fit any pattern. It's really hard to figure out what those things are. So this is actually before you start doing pivots and joins on things, you want to actually make sure that that data is cleaned up and standardized. From there, what we'll do next is then talk about validation of the data, right? So remember, the whole goal of this is to make sure that your data is ready for analytics or downstream modeling, right? But how do you know your downstream system will actually accept your results? All these systems have very specific schemas they're expecting the data in certain pattern order, right? How do you ensure that that is actually going to work? And of course, if you want to automate all this, you have to make sure that thing's working consistently and working each time. Okay? So these are the four challenges we'll be talking about, and we'll use the following scenarios to talk through them. The first one's going to be understanding nested data, where we'll show you how to unpack and extract information out of deeply nested elements. Next is normalizing data patterns, We'll talk about profiling, understanding those patterns, and then converting them into a standard that you're looking for. When we talked about inconsistent data, we'll show you something new with data prep around clustering and standardizing your data. And the last one, validating results. We'll show you how to compare and match against your end target so that you know what you're generating is actually going to be successful in your end system. Okay? All right, so let's get started. I'll cover the first two, nested data and data patterns. And then, like I said, we'll actually demonstrate some of these. So thinking of nested data, right, often users start off with nested file formats, right? So JSON, Avro, XLS, Parquet. That's just the starting part of that, right? So let's take a look at what this looks like. I hope no one can read this, because this is actually really painful to understand. It's got a lot of wonderful information on it, but it's really hard to use, really hard to understand, really hard to get any value out of it, right? So, and what's furthermore, even if you found a way to parse it, yeah, okay, let's parse this. This is fairly easy, JSON, just parse it. You're still left with these type of elements, right? Complex data elements, often seen as arrays or key value pairs. Now, this happens not just in files, but this also happens in BigQuery. I'm sure many folks are familiar with nested fields in BigQuery. You'll see this type of data nested inside of it, right? So you'll still encounter an issue where, hey, after I've done the first level of understanding the data, I need to go deeper than that. And finally, even if you get to individual values, let's say, for example, I get to the search reference here, and I get to my individual value here. Well, really, you don't want to access the whole thing. You actually want to get access to some of the embedded values inside of it, right? So this clicker's slightly off. So what you want to do is you actually want to extract specific parts. In this case here, you're looking for the search term that was actually used. So that's an embedded case. So once again, it's still nested data, even though you're down to the individual value. OK, so how does data prep handle this scenario? Well, first thing out of the box, Cloud Dataprep supports those various file formats, and will immediately show you that data in a row and column format, right? So you immediately see these elements here. Actually, I'll point at this. The elements here, the customer, you'll see them as individual columns. You'll also see the data types automatically inferred in the case where you have nested values, this key value pair here. You'll see that automatically show up here, and then the rest of the data broken out from there. Now, the nice part about this is that because data prep has understood this as a nested value, it actually can help you inspect the contents by simply clicking on it, and you'll be able to see a nicely formatted. You'll be able to see the individual elements nicely formatted. Right? So this is important because, hey, this is information I'm looking to have, and I want to actually use this for my transformations. So very easily, you'll be able to decide, do I want to expand this as rows or expand this as columns? In this case, I kind of want to unnest this and expand this as columns. So just one click, and then I can just unnest it, and immediately it becomes 5 columns in my same data set. So now you can perform your aggregation, your joins, whatever you need. Now, this is a scenario where I actually wanted to expand it out. But funny enough, a key trick is that not all your data is relevant. One of the hard parts of nested data is that then there's a lot of data that's inside of it, and sometimes it's all garbage. Or a lot of it's garbage. And expanding and unpacking all of it may be a waste of your time. It may be slow. It actually may cause more confusion. So there are times where you actually want to be much more specific about the data that you extract out. So I showed you an example where I did expand it out. But let me show you one now where I have, once again, I have these key value pairs here, right? So this is a sales order line. I've got some interesting information inside of it. That's great. But I don't need all of this. I really just want product key and let's say total sale. So what you can actually do as part of the bar chart up here, data prep allows you to actually select those individual elements, the things that are highlighted in green. Just select the elements that you need. And you can actually tell data prep just to extract those. And it'll just produce those 2 columns. So you don't need to expand everything and just kind of blow out your data set. Just get the things that you need because you can see what's inside of it. Other things you can do with nested elements is that you can actually perform metadata operations. Sometimes you might ask the question like, how many elements are in this nested value? And you want to use that in your data. You can also perform those operations directly on these objects. OK, the last one I want to show is just talking about those getting that substring of information. So in this example here, I want to grab that search term, I want to grab that search term. So what you'll see here is that all you have to do is highlight the data that you're interested in. So you interact directly with it, highlight it, and Dataprep will automatically suggest a transformation that extracts it out for you. So you don't have to deal with the whole string. You're just dealing with what you need. Okay? All right. So now we've got our data expanded, extracted. Let's take a look at the data itself. And when you're dealing with data, when you're looking at the individual parts of the data, you're probably looking at patterns inside of it, right? And I'm sure everyone's familiar with these. These are pretty standard examples. Oops. These are pretty standard examples. But of course, it depends on your geography, depends on where your data is from that these standards apply, right? And problems arise when you have data coming in from different places that you're combining and joining and blending, and they have different formats. You can't use it, right? Like if these things it's going to be confusing if you try to combine these things in the same data set because they're just different values. So the problem, of course, is that parsing this, even identifying these patterns inside data is not easy, right? Everyone here familiar with regular expressions? Who loves regular expressions here? Just a quick show of hands. All right, so you don't need to be here for this. Thanks, bye. For everyone else, this is going to be a challenge, right? This is going to be a challenge to not only identify the patterns that you want, but even then, can you imagine how do you convert all the other patterns into a standard that you want? You're going to be dealing with multiple regular expressions on that. OK, so the nice part is that Dataprep actually handles this, actually has more built-in tools specifically around data patterns. What you see here is Dataprep taking a column, and you can see additional column details here for a selected column, right? Not only does it tell you its data quality up top, it tells you unique value and distribution, but down here, it actually breaks out all the pattern combinations that are within the data itself and shows you the cardinality. So now you know what's in it and how often does it appear. Okay? This is super useful because then you can figure out which format do you want to standardize the data on, right? Which format do you want to normalize and put things on? In this case, although majority of the data is in year, month, day, I actually want it to be in month, day, year, right? So that's kind of what I want. So it's as simple as clicking on the pattern that you're interested in, and you'll get a suggestion for transforming that data that automatically takes all the other patterns here, converts all these other value patterns here into the pattern format that you want. And all the syntax is handled under the covers. So no regular expression for you. So sorry, the few people who wanted this, no regular expressions for you. OK. At this point, it's probably enough of me talking. You probably want to see this in action. So I'm going to hand it over to Cindy so she can show you to you in the product.
All right. Thanks, Sean. OK, so here we are in the Cloud Dataprep homepage. And under my recently updated items, I'm just going to choose the sales data flow. When I do that, it takes us into a flow view. And think of the flow as a project and just a way to organize your work. I've already registered a data set here in this flow. I can select it to see more details over here on the side. So we'll see that this is a JSON file, and it resides in GCS, and there's additional metadata here as well. Now, I've already started doing some transformations. So I have some transformation logic in my recipe that's attached to the data. We're going to choose to edit the recipe, and we're going to add more transformation logic. When we do that, we're brought into what we refer to as a transformer grid. And you're presented with rows and columns of your data. Now, I want you to keep in mind, when we looked at the details of that data set, it was a JSON file. Remember that? And do you notice how Dataprep has automatically unnested the file format into rows and columns for you? That's pretty cool. We've also done some really other great things, too. So you're also presented with the profile of your data. So we do that with these bar charts and histograms. And that's for every single column that you have. And we also give you this quality bar, which is kind of nice as well. And this is based on the inferred data type. That Dataprep will infer a data type for you when you load data. So we're going to give you a quality bar that will tell you how many valid or mismatched values you have present. So what's the first thing you notice? there's a big red flag on this in this data here. So the first thing I notice are these red sections of the quality bar. So it's saying, come take a look at me. There's something wrong here. So for an example, under currency key, my data type is inferred as an integer. Now I can show that I have valid values present by the green section of that quality bar. And then I have mismatch values present as well. So this tells me that I have some data in here that's actually not an integer. So it flags us, and it's a really nice visual cue to say there's issues with the data. To deal with that, I'm just going to click on it. So you can interact with these histograms and the quality bars. And when I do that, I'm basically interacting with the data. So when you interact with the data, what we're going to do is we're going to come up with this predictive interactions. So Dataprep has a predictive interaction engine. Based on your interaction and the data you're looking at, you're going to get these suggestions over here. The first suggestion that I get was to delete these rows. I don't really want to delete these rows. What I want to do is I want to deal with this data. So I'm going to come down here to this set suggestion. And I have this set suggestion that says, set the mismatch values to 0. When I choose it, I get a really nice preview before I actually add that logic to my recipe. So it helps you make decisions on whether this is something you actually want to do or not. So this is fantastic. So I actually do want this, so I'm just going to hit add. You see a nice cleaned up quality bar right here. That logic is added to my recipe. Now you can also interact with the bar charts or the histograms, as well as interacting directly with the data. So here I'm going to select this comma in my customer name because I want to split out the last name from the first name. So all I have to do is interact with that comma. Again, I get suggestions over here. I get a split suggestion as the first one. It wants me, the first suggestion is just to say, okay, it's any delimiter, but I'm going to specify the comma as the delimiter. Again, we get a nice preview. This is exactly what I want. I'm just going to add that. Now we're going to come over here to this sales order line. Now this is a bit trickier. So here, the data type is an array. Now an array in Dataprep, as many of you probably know, is just a list of items or a group of elements. I'm going to expand to look at this. So not the prettiest thing. To help visualize, I'm going to search my rows just for an open curly bracket. So when I do that, I can see the start of each element or each item in this array. So this is really helpful because I can visualize it. But what I really need to do here is inspect the information that's associated with the sales order lines. And I have to get each of these individual elements into their own unique row. So that's really easy to do in Dataprep. All I'm going to do is come over here to the sales order line, select it. Again, we do get some details over here about the data as well as suggestions. I'm going to come down to this flatten array values into new rows. I'm going to select that. It says convert arrays in the sales order line to rows. And what that does, and you can see in the preview, is it's going to take each element in that array, those lists of items, and put it into its own rows. And I did it with just the click of a button. And you can see all of these elements from that list put into their own row, as well as all of the other relevant data associated with that row is populated. So I'm just going to add this. It's exactly what I want. I'm going to add that to my recipe. You come back to that column. We have a new data type. We have an object. The object is basically these key value pairs. So you can see that because you can expand the data. And you can see all of these keys here and all the values associated with the keys. Now, as Sean had talked about, we don't want to extract all of that information. I'm only interested in a couple of items within the sales order line. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to extract just a couple of these key value pairs. And to do that, I'm going to come to the histogram. I'm going to select this bar chart that represents the product key, and then the bar chart that represents the unit price. We get a nice preview. The suggestion, of course, is to unnest and create new columns for these keys. So the product key becomes the header, and the unit price becomes the header, and then all of the values associated with those keys are now populated in your rows. It's exactly what I want. I'm going to add it. And now basically I have expanded my data, the rows and the columns, by just flattening and then extracting the relevant information. So now I'm done pulling out the information that I'm most interested in.
That looked really easy. It's just, half a dozen steps or so.
Well, Sean, if you were paying attention, you would see that it was only 2 steps.
My bad.
All right, I'm going to continue with this data because over here in the order date, I see that I still have some mismatch values, and I need to finish prepping my data. So again, I could just select this red section to see what's mismatched. You're given all of the rows. When you select that, it's going to highlight all of the rows that are mismatch value. And I can kind of visually see right here that I just have different date formats. So what I really want to do with this column is to get everything into the same date format. Again, it's pretty easy to do this in Dataprep. I'm going to select that column. Over here are those details again. And then we have this section that's called patterns. Now I can choose to show pattern details. Well, it will give you these patterns right here. We will tell the number of rows, and then you get a little sample of data as well. So I actually want to go month, day, day, year, 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 year. I'm going to choose that pattern. Now again, I've just interacted with the data. I get these suggestions over here on the right panel. The first suggestion is keep rows. That's actually what we're seeing, but I'm going to come down to this convert rows. And if you look here, it's converting values like these 3 that I don't want to that 1 that I actually selected in the patterns. So 3 to 1 in 1 step. So I'm going to hit add. And when I do that, this gets updated with the standardized format that I selected. Pretty nice. OK, so I was able to profile, identify the pattern of interest, change it, and then validate, because if you look now, we have that quality bar here, and it's all valid values. So that's the end of the first part of the demo. We're going to go back to Sean, and he's going to talk about a couple more.
I think there were 2 people here who are sad you didn't do regular expressions. So.
Oh, no. You want me to have a headache?
OK, so we're moving on to the next 2 examples with inconsistent data and results validation. We just covered patterns, so what the hell is inconsistent data supposed to mean? Well, that's actually specifically data that doesn't really conform to any patterns. So quick example here of here's a company that, of course, humans have entered, right? Acme Inc., right? You have slightly different variations of the data. You see one with periods and hyphen. I think spell checker kicked in and just renamed this to Acne. And then we've got nice formatting. You've got bolds and quotes that you have inside of this, right? So while we can all recognize this is probably all the same company, not so great for your data, not so great if you're going to do analysis on this, right? So it's really hard to pick this up. Of course, the goal is then to standardize this to a single established value so that you can make effective use of joins and aggregations, because you do want Acme Inc. to show up 4 times, right, as 1 time, as opposed to 4 different companies inside. OK, so this is something new that we've added to Dataprep recently, is the ability to cluster and cluster your data into groups based on clustering algorithms. This is something we released just a few weeks ago. And in this example here, what you'll see is that we have several different clustering algorithms that will grab the data, that will access the data, that will take the data in a given column and show to you kind of how many rows show up for a given instance of that data, kind of group them all together for you. There are different ways you can group the data based on comparing values, closest spelling, sometimes pronunciation. And that's really important because the trick to all this is that you don't want to apply just one algorithm when you're defining your groups. You actually want to apply multiple algorithms on this. The reason why is you want to capture as many of these inconsistencies as possible so you can standardize them. So for example, I could apply additional additional algorithms on this, multiple of them, and you'll see more come out. This one I applied was pronunciation, so you'll see things like acme and acme, right? These pronounce similarly, so you actually want to include them into your group. It just makes things a lot easier for you to then standardize it and go forward from there, right? You can type in what you want your end result to be. Now, all this said, wonderful algorithms that are, we're constantly making better and better, it's never ever going to be perfect. So one of the nice part of being able to interact with the data and actually see this is that you can now also identify when there are exceptions to the rule. So now as an example where the clustering, because of the pronunciation, it captured one too many. In this case, I was just looking for BB construction, but not BB construction. That's not what I wanted. So you actually will be able to go into Dataprep, select that exception, just highlight it and say, I don't want to include this, so I can still standardize on everything else. So it also captures exceptions in addition to the standard set. OK, so now we're at a point where we've gone through most of the challenges. We've addressed the structured and formatted data. We've made sure that we've cleansed the data. You probably perform a bunch of transformations, to pivot the data, apply formulas. The last one we want to cover again was the data validation. How do you know that what you just built is actually going to be useful downstream? So when it comes to the target, you'll often see examples like this where the targets have a very well-designed schema. This is an example of a big query table. Everyone's familiar with this. Columns, data types, constraints. Pretty standard in that regard, right? And most of the time, when you're preparing data, you probably have a good sense of what you're looking for. You're going to go manually compare, or you're going to remember it off of memory what you want. And you decide, OK, I think it's what I wanted. I'm going to go ahead and publish this to, again, I'm going to use BigQuery in this example. And oops, BigQuery greets you with a very specific and accurate error message. And while it's got all the information you want, it's actually very difficult to parse and figure out what went wrong, right? You might be going back and forth trying to figure out, well, what's wrong in my data prep? What's wrong in the BigQuery table? And you kind of want to go back and forth between the two and figure that thing out. I will note that while you see this error message in BigQuery, you see the same problem with files as well. It's actually kind of worse because they don't tell you what the schema is supposed to be, so you won't find out until you kind of pass it along and you get bad data. Well, the good thing is Dataprep allows you to do this comparison much, much more easily. And you achieve that by comparing the target directly in the data set itself. So what you can do is you can actually import the target here directly into the data set, and it will automatically align against the data that you're working with. So you can do that direct comparison and see samples of the data, understand what that is. Right? This comparison is really useful because then you also get these indicators that tell you, hey, how well are things matched up? So green indicating things are very well matched up. That's exactly what you want. Blue indicating that there's slight mismatches that you want to address. Red indicating there's something significantly wrong. And the last part about this is because now Dataprep knows what you want it to look like, it actually can suggest transformations to help fix this. Right? So in this case, I'm going to fix the effective date. I'm going to click on that, and it's going to tell me, oh, the problem with your effective date is that your formats are incorrect. Instead of, right, you want to change it from day, month, year, back to year, month. Great. That's what I want to do. So it's as simple as clicking on it, and it will automatically fix it. Now, there may be cases where we're dealing with Y data sets, where you're dealing with potentially Y data sets, potentially hundreds of columns across. In that situation, what you can do is switch to the column view of Dataprep, and it allows you to more compactly see just the columns. It's much easier to reorder, rename columns en masse. You can also decide to remove columns or add missing ones. And the whole goal, of course, is then to make sure everything matches, everything's good to go in green, and validate this in the product before you go ahead and publish it, before you set your automation. All right, so let's now see this in action. Sydney?
Great. Thanks again, Sean. Wait for our screen to come up. There we go. OK, so I am back in Dataprep, and I'm in the transformer grid. And I have a different data set here. And this is actually, it resides in GCS. And it's some recently uploaded customer data. So it has some information like their first name, their last name, their account number, some employer information, and many other fields here. Now, what I need to do with this is I need to take this data set, and I need to append a customer details table in BigQuery. So before I do that, though, I know I have some manually entered data here. So I have to do some column standardization. And I need to do that on this employer column because I have lots of different company names here. And I'm sure you can imagine some of the challenges with this manually entered data if you're going to do some aggregations and you don't have a single standardized value. So I'm going to come to the employer column. We're going to go to this drop-down menu, and we have standardize right here. So when I choose standardize, I'm just going to show you where that clustering option is. We run the first cluster to look at the similar strings across all the rows. So we're clustering all of the rows based on characters in common. So here with Acme Inc., I see I have 10 different values. So Acme Inc. written 10 different times across 53 different rows. And that's really quite a problem sometimes. So there are things here. It's not just like capitalization, but it's also hyphens present, commas present, periods present, people who embellish their company name when they're inputting it themselves. the quotes here. So I want to get all of these to the same value. To do that, I'm going to select them all. We'll come over here. I'm going to enter my new value. Make it kind of simple. Now, before I apply this, Sean talked about running another algorithm. So we're going to come back to the clustering options, and we're going to now cluster values based on pronunciation. So all of the rows that actually sound alike. And when I do that, what do you see? We actually have a few more rows show up. Now, the nice thing here is all I have to do is come and click on these. And as I select them, the value, that standardized value that I want, is automatically put in. It's that simple. I'm now going to hit apply. We're now going to choose to add this logic to my recipe step. So you can always come back and look at this. When we come back to the transformer grid, the recipe opens up. And we now have this reusable logic. So anytime we have new data coming in, we can actually use this logic that we've already created to do exactly the same thing. So that's pretty nice. Now, if you remember what we want to do with this data set, so we've done our standardization, is I want to now run a job, and I'm going to append that BigQuery table, the customer details. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to choose Run Job. And I already have my publishing action set up, so append BigQuery, the customer details. I'm going to run this in US West is fine, and I'll hit Run Job. Oh, okay, look at what we have here. Something's not happy with this, so we can't run the job. So what I've done is I only paid attention to the data. What did I not pay attention to? I didn't pay attention to the schema in BigQuery, so I need to fix that. So I'm going to cancel, close out of this recipe. Now, I have the schema over here in BigQuery, so what I could do is I can come down here, I can look at the schema, scroll down. Or not. They've changed my resolution on the screen. So there's a schema down here. Here we see account number. It's an integer. So we'll come back to data prep. And OK, here's an account number. Here's the integer. Or it's a string, though, so I'd have to change that. So I could go back to BigQuery, and I could try and look at that schema again. There we go. And then back to data prep. Wow, that's kind of clunky, not really a lot of fun. I don't really want to do that, especially for a really wide data set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load that target right here in my transformer grid. So I'm going to attach a target. I'm going to look for my customer details target schema, and I'm going to add it. So that's pretty nice. This is right from BigQuery. This is the table that I want to update. And we're going to give you a sample of the data as well. And we give you these visual cues to help you get this source data to the target schema that we want. Now, we also have a column view, which is super helpful when you're looking at wide data. It's a bit more efficient. So I go to I just clicked on this column view here. Over here is our target, over here is the source. Again, we have these visual cues. The first position is the account number, and it's an integer. When I hover over this blue box here, it's telling you there's a matching column. I can move it, and it will show you in the source where that column is. So watch real close. I just selected that blue box, and it automatically moved that account number. Does anybody notice what else it did? There's a big hint. It automatically changed it to an integer for me, so I don't have to go in and do any of that. So now I'm just going to continue down. Okay, city. We have all of these matches, which is fantastic. This is so easy. Then we come down here, and we have this contract start, and it's a red box. Now, if it doesn't automatically detect this for me, I can choose what column. And I know I have this column 1. I actually know, I can see the data type is the same, and I happen to know it is the contract start. So all I'm going to do is scroll down and select that column 1. It automatically renames it for me, and we have nice alignment. Now, I have 2 extra columns, so this is why I got that big error, in addition to the 1 data type difference. I'm just going to select these. Again, I'm interacting with the data. I get these suggestions over here on the side. I'm going to come down to the delete columns because I don't want it. I'm going to choose add. We'll go back to that grid view, close out of this recipe. And nicely, I can validate against my BigQuery table before I actually publish. Pretty awesome. Now I'm going to run the job. Again, we're appending. US West is fine. We'll hit run job. OK, so it's going to run the job. I've easily standardized the data, and then I quickly use that target schema that we loaded into the transformer grid to get my source data ready for publication into BigQuery. So that covers the second part.
Well, that looked like fun. All you're doing was just kind of clicking, and it automatically transformed everything for you.
Yep, kind of like a video game.
All right, so now we'll just wrap up, coming to the end. Very quickly, we'll cover the topics, just takeaways from what we just covered. And I'll talk a little about some of the next steps that you might be interested in. So if we remember, we covered 4 topics, 4 challenges that we're going after. Right? First was nested data. How do you expand and extract values from that nested data? Right? So we saw examples of that. Following that, when you're dealing with data patterns, take advantage of the column profile details, and then use the suggested transforms to actually fix those formats. You don't have to write everything from scratch. When it comes to standardization, use multiple algorithms, build that group as much as possible so you get the widest set. And the last one to note is, when it comes down to publishing, before you do that, quickly validate it. Make sure that your data actually matches your target, and hopefully can solve a lot of the minor details that you need in order to make it successful. OK. These are just a few of the powerful techniques and transformations that are available in Cloud Dataprep that help you gain insight inside your data, all through a simple, easy-to-use interface. We didn't have a chance to talk about some of the sharing and automation capabilities that are part of Dataprep, so you can build out and maintain your pipeline. But if you're interested in learning more, we do have a booth here. It's between the serverless analytics and machine learning zones, where you can ask Dataprep experts any questions that you may have. As well, you can sign up for our training workshop. We do these things in person. And then lastly, if you want more examples, things that you've seen outside here, please take a look at the Dataprep community. And one last part is for the folks who actually haven't tried Cloud Dataprep, right? And we're just here just as an intro. You can try it today. Just go to your console and just launch Dataprep directly from there. It's in the big data section. OK? And with that, thank you very much.